Well, good morning. Welcome to the distribution Thursday demo. Name's Gerard. I'm going to be doing a demo today, and I'm looking to try to recreate and solve a possible problem we might be having with newer versions of Kubernetes and the Ingress API version set. So this is the issue here. And it was reported that, I believe it was Kubernetes 1.18 is having some issues. I was thinking it's this API version causing issues. There's some discussion further on that might be illuminating, but I'm going to go ahead and start bringing up the GitLab chart, latest GitLab chart with that extensions v1 beta 1, which is still currently what we have set in our charts, and see if we're going to actually have a problem with the ingress or not. I have a provisioned Kubernetes 1.18 in GKE that I'll be using. And so let me go ahead and kick that off. Okay, good enough. All right, so that'll take a minute or two. One of the things that, in looking at this issue, one of the things I quickly started to identify is that with the newer versions of Kubernetes, we have a change in that API version. Specifically, it went to networking K8s IO v1 beta 1. The latest versions, and I think 1.19 will be moving it to v1. So I think this is going to need to get addressed here pretty soon, even if it is currently working on 1.18. So. Okay. Just start to wait for a lot of our, specifically our web service pods to come ready. I think one of the things that this issue might illuminate is we probably need to have a better way of tracking and figuring out how we set our API versions as Kubernetes continues to develop. So actually, I was thinking about that this morning. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wonder if I should take this issue as a maintainer discussion, or if we should create another issue, have that discussion external to this. So if anybody has any thoughts, I'm open to them.
I think we do need to have some discussion about the current supported versions and some idea of what versions users actively make use of. As seen in the note just behind the terminal there, in 1.16, it was still extensions v1 beta 1. In 1.18, it became networking.k8s.io v1 beta 1. And there's an automatic transition or an upgrade of the model from extensions v1 beta 1 into networking K8s, as Gerard's about to show. There are significant changes to the way ingresses function in 1.18, specifically regarding path type was added. There are minor changes between networking K8s.io v1 beta 1 and v1 in 19 and 20. The trick that we have to be concerned with is, yes, there are ways to detect the version of Kubernetes in use. And there are ways to tell Helm, even if you're not actually talking to Kubernetes, assume it's this version. We just have to figure out which versions we want to actually support, AKA, should we still be supporting 14 and 15? And two, how do we handle this kind of change when it's literally a full API version change?
Right. And I mean, in previous discussions, we've talked about just supporting the last three minor versions of Kubernetes, I believe. So at some point, 1.16 pretty much goes away, actually, almost ready to go away. So that may have impact on our customers too, but that's what we're going to officially support.
Yeah, I think
Right.
as of right now, we've been supporting, basically we've been basing our support around the oldest version that EKS and GCP are supporting is what we've been doing. But we should probably take a look and see if we're gathering usage ping data on our customers. We haven't looked at that in terms of making our decisions for versions prior to this, so it'd be interesting to see if we have that data.
All right, we got one up, so let's see if we can get to ingress now. I was actually seeing this, I tried a little bit of this late last night. I was starting to see some of this issue with other stuff. So it's almost like I've got a cert that's cached somewhere and I haven't figured out where that is.
I can't say I've seen this one. I think the reused issuer and serial is odd. Can you look at the certificate information for this?
Sorry.
If you go to the little I beside the URL.
Yeah, I just got to get it out away from the Zoom dashboard. Okay. Usually I have a view certificates right here.
Yeah, that's weird.
Isn't it?
What's the little question mark at the bottom here show? What does this do? Nothing.
Not much.
Okay.
Okay. Now, one of the things I did last night said forget the site to make sure it cleared all connection information on that. Well, let me do this. Let me
use the developer console too, like Command-Shift-I or whatever your browser uses.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, and then if you go to network and reload the page, you should have a request, and then you can click one of those requests and a box will pop up on the right. And then in security, that security tab on the right, it should say more about it. I don't know if it's useful, but.
So the hilarious complaint is that the certificate is not actually the same, but it's using the same issuer and serial number.
Yeah.
So when you deployed this, like I'm wondering if somehow it's issuing the same certificate by name, or if it's using the same serial number somehow. I mean, you got it to come up.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't all the way up yet.
Maybe it wasn't all the way up. Yeah. I just realized it came up. Sorry. I wasn't even looking above.
Well, I was about to say it, and I'm like, hey, wait, it came up. So I'm wondering if it's like that Kubernetes fake ingress. cert that it hands you until it has the cert.
Could be.
Yeah, it could also be that opening the web console disabled the whatever the cache was that you were running into.
All right. Well, first of all, let me get the password here. Let's see. If I could type and spell, that would help a little bit. But actually, we're in here and we're getting good data, so that tends to say that we're still, or 118 is still accepting the extensions API.
Okay, so 118 is accepting it, but is it automatically translating it?
I don't know how would we tell that?
Do a kube control get, or you open it in K9s and get the ingress itself as a YAML. If it returns it and the data type on the API has changed, it's actually been translated by the admission controller.
Get the name first. Web service default. That still sets the extensions there. So you think if it was actually doing an automatic translation, that it would show up here, not just be within the API server doing it magically behind the scenes?
Right.
Okay.
We've seen that in the past. I think it was a job behavior of some kind we bumped into, or was it early HPA where we would submit it and it was like a beta type and it would come back as a V1.
Okay. Okay, well, this sort of blew my idea out of the water. I figured this would give us some trouble and I would end up editing the ingress directly and change it to the networking API and get it working again. So good information, not so spectacular demo, I guess.
Right. There is an issue that I was responding to earlier today where the user had an explicit problem because we don't use the networking.kates.io for the ingress. They are using a AWS ALB. And because the default behavior is to flip the path type, so in the definitions of the actual paths for the hosts, there's a path type to go with the path. When you do that, it automatically provides that as implementation specific. However, there's different types. There's 3 or 4 different types that you can use in the new model ingress. It can be a prefix so that it's basically treated as a regex. You literally just do, does the string start with this, right? Or it's implementation specific, which is what we get. In the ALB, it does exact matching or regex. So like if you want the default ingress path to be slash, aka handle all the traffic, you actually have to say that it is slash star so that the ALB will actually route traffic to the right pods. Otherwise, the only traffic that makes it is the initial slash.
Yeah, I remember some of that from a EBS, work with EBS a long time ago.
Right, so that's still a thing.
Okay.
So that the related one I have in the notes there, basically I had to tell them this is the workaround to the check that we have in place that ensures that you always have at least one with slash until we can put some sort of mitigation in place. I'm kind of glad I put that in. Not what I meant it for, but I'm glad I put it in. And this comes down to literally like the APIs. The comment that I have on the issue that you were going to try to demo, I don't think that has direct links to the ingress APIs. Oh, wait, maybe it does. The other one I was specifically pointing out, like this is how the models changed between these versions, and this is where you went. If you look at the 1.18 version, the V1 beta 1. Okay, so follow this down, click on ingress spec, which actually is right there.
Yep.
From there, go to ingress rule. You can just click on it backwards.
Was it up there somewhere?
Yeah.
Right there it is.
And then go to HTTP. So there's the last item, there's the HTTP ingress rule value. And that goes into paths. So you click on that. Yes, we're just basically walking down the data model. Okay, here's the addition. This is the problem that the users are bumping into when it is path type. By definition, if not specified, it will set it to implementation specific. Because if your implementation is accustomed to doing everything as a prefix and you set it to prefix, then it'll probably work. But due to the nature that you can handle these separately now, you may actually have a problem if they set it to anything else. This is the one that breaks things for people. And this doesn't exist in the 1.16. So and yes, I have tried it. If you try to submit the networking Kates to 1.16, it will literally go, I don't know this, you can't do that.
Okay.
So when it comes to the interesting cases that we've had to do with the Git API fleet, DJ, you might remember this one. In production, they use a regex to match that. To do that, you have to make sure that when you're using the newer version that you have this set to implementation specific, and then you have to tell Nginx that it is actually a regex. And then on top of that, you have to use explicitly POSIX compliant regex because the implementation methodology and the way it has to pass everything around across who knows how many languages, it's actually problematic, to say the least.
All right. Well, I think that's all I have. Unfortunately, I don't have any. Don't show the failure, don't show a solution yet. So.
Yeah, the only way to show a failure or show an actual change would be a version that doesn't actually support the automatic conversion or does a forced conversion. So you'd have to deploy like K9S or kind with 119 or 120 and see if this actually like breaks in 120 and what happens.
Right. Yeah, probably 120 would definitely break. So, all right. Maybe I'll try to do that next couple of days, and that might start to get us to think about how we want to handle this API version.
Right. Now, nominally, this isn't like a huge thing, but it's a behavior we need to be aware of throughout all the charts because we're going to start seeing this. And so we'll need to actually see exactly what happened between the two ingress object types. And then because 119 and 120 support V1, we'll have to see what the difference is between extensions V1 beta 1, networking Kates V1 beta 1, and the final V1.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a very minor tweak, but if they've changed, say, how the property lists, the actual listing items change, then we've got a model difference and we have to figure out which way to populate which into an actual template. Fun.
Yeah. That's definitely a word for it, fun. Do you envision by thought of using the Helm capabilities, KubeVersion being the best way to handle dealing with this?
That is effectively what it's designed for. If you run Helm template, so you got 3.24 is what you're active with. So yep. Run Helm template -- help. You'll find Kube API server, and there's somewhere in here, there's a setting for what the version of the Kube API is. Ah, there it is.
So it says string.
There's where's some string in here, this mess. Version tells you which version of the chart to use, assuming you're doing that. There is one that allows you to set which version of the Kube API that it basically populates that .kube version that you were speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
Was it API versions at the top, maybe? First one?
That's for
capabilities
API
APIs.
versions. That one doesn't quite work. That's a much more full-bodied option, because then you can say which versions of APIs that you actually support the chart deploying at all. So if you try to use that flag, you need to be very, very careful that you supply all the ones that the chart's going to try and use if you're checking those contents, because then everything's going to go all kinds of weird. It's like, oh, I have API version that I don't know if it's going to take it or not, right? So in Helm 2, when you ran template, you actually could tell it specifically the version of the server. I'll have to find this.
To be in a newer version.
Try 3.3 something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I've got installed.
Do ASDF list Helm.
That's what I was looking for. So I got a 3.5.2.
Mm-hmm.
Not see anything there either.
Yeah, that would be a good question at that point.
If interesting that it was in, if it was in 2 and then they took nothing at 2. Although there's this one here, KubeVersion. Looks like they took it away. Or there's another way of specifying it. All right, I'll take a note to look for how to do it in 3 and at least allow us to take a look a bit more at that.
So I was just looking at the release notes around the ingress change, and it looks like the old endpoint is supposed to be still served until Kubernetes 1.22. So 1.22 is when it disappears. But that being said, they've been making, so related to what Jason was running into earlier with path type, not only was that not available? But you know, in 119 they also changed the default, so there is no default as of 119. So 118 I think has a default, right? And then 119 doesn't have a default, so that also is going to be problematic in terms of a difference in behavior between the two.
Okay. It sounds like we've got enough questions and thoughts and so forth. I'll create another issue and mark it maintainer discussion so that we can start thinking about this more and coming up with the ideas and get them listed.
Yeah, we'll have to figure this one out. And the EKS version in use was 118.9 from the reported issue.
Okay.
So they got the implementation specific default. And it ended up breaking them.
So, all right. I think that's about it. Unless someone else has something else they want to see or other questions.
I think we're good.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you all for attending.